Hi, everybody. This is Guru here from my channel, Guru's Musing. I usually talk about technology in the life sciences, including healthcare. So today I'll be talking about the various jobs in data science and machine learning in the field of life sciences and healthcare. If you would have seen my previous videos, I'll put a link there as well. I had clearly called that we need to have subject matter experts, basically students and professionals from the life sciences community, learn and come into this field of AI, data science, and machine learning. So today in this video, I'll talk about what are some of those roles in the field of data science and machine learning which come under AI, for which you as a student or a professional in the life sciences can try to get into. All right. So before I get into the actual roles, let me first briefly talk about the life cycle of a typical machine learning project. The typical life cycle of a machine learning project is as follows. The first stage is the planning stage, wherein you actually look at the problem statement, you look at the success metrics, you look at feasibility, you look at other aspects as well to ensure that developing a solution to attack this problem makes sense. So that is the planning phase, and you would have people in leadership positions, you would have subject matter experts, and you of course would have AI experts playing a role there in order to do the planning. The second step would be data. In any technology in AI, which includes data science and machine learning, data is key. You would need the data and the model needs to learn from the data. So in the data preparation stage, there you have analysts and data scientists working on the data to first of all ensuring that we have access to the data, we clean the data and we process it and keep it ready so that the actual machine learning development, which is the training of the models, can happen. So that is the data preparation stage. The third stage is the model engineering. This can be considered as the core stage in machine learning development. So what happens in model engineering? The data scientist, who is the lead here, he uses the data. He may transform the data as required, and he would then use that data to train various types of machine learning models in order to tackle the problem in hand. So this is the model engineering stage. The next stage is the model evaluation. So as the outcomes of the model engineering stage, you would end up having a number of models that the data scientist has along with the team developed and tried. Now, those models that were developed in the model engineering stage would then be evaluated. And this evaluation is usually done on some test data which has not been exposed to the model in the earlier stages. And there are some other methods as well. They look at the various metrics and then they take a call on which is the model best that they need to take forward. And the final stage is the model deployment. We have been doing all these activities to finally come up with a model which fits our purpose. So we have an original problem statement. We need to come up with a solution to tackle it. And finally, as part of the model evaluation, we select one or a few models. So in the model deployment stage, this model then has to be deployed for use. So let's say we're building a model which will, based on certain meters, call out a risk of a particular event. Now, this model should be made available to the user. So maybe it is a physician or maybe it is a patient themselves who are going to use it. But how do they use it? We have to make this accessible to them. So the deployment might happen on the cloud, and the other usual software development aspects come in here to ensure that it is made available appropriately. This is the deployment stage. So these are the 5 stages of a typical machine learning project. Now, these are projects in which the project ends with deployment, and it doesn't actually end because there's a monitoring phase. But what I mean here is the models that are selected are finally deployed. However, the vast majority of projects that happen in the field of AI in typical healthcare and pharma companies are usually only proof of concepts. All the stages of what we talked about right now, except the last stage, which is the deployment, would happen. So over here, it actually ends with coming up with the model and the report. And in the report, it would be elaborated in terms of what was done, what was achieved, what worked, what didn't work, what are some insights, and so on. So these are proof of concepts which do not eventually end up in deployment of the solution. Let's now talk about what are some typical roles with regards to data science and machine learning in specifically in healthcare and pharma companies. So the first role that I want to talk about is the data analyst. This is usually an entry level role, but there are cases where an analyst is quite a senior role and they're paid very handsomely as well. So what does an analyst do? He works on data and he or she cleans the data and generates insights from the data. And in certain cases, the data that is cleaned up and processed is then made available, as we saw in the machine learning lifecycle. So this analysis with regards to the machine learning lifecycle, this usually happens in the data preparation stage. So the data analyst works on the data in the preparation stage. So what is required of a data analyst? He or she be very proficient in certain tools to work on data and generate insights. So I would expect that most analysts would be proficient in working on usually R and Python. The second is the data scientist is the person who works on the clean and process data that is provided to him or her by the data analyst, or he he may do that work by himself as well. And then he processes and transforms the data and then does the training. Training is basically the term that we use in order to call out the process in which the model gets trained on the data to learn the pattern so that it is now ready to do that particular task or that inference. So the data scientist has to be very proficient in knowing all the data science algorithms. Of course, no data scientist knows all algorithms, but he should have mastery over certain core data science algorithms which are useful for his day-to-day work. In addition, of course, he need to have a decent understanding of the mathematics so that he can interpret these and in cases where the result is not matching as expected, he can continue to try other models or transform the data in a different way, or even in certain cases restructure the problem statement. The third role that is relevant over here is the machine learning engineer. So there's a pure technical role, and the machine learning engineer, his primary responsibility is to ensure that a model that has been evaluated is deployed usually on the cloud and monitored. Okay, so this, as you can understand, the machine learning engineer plays a key role in the final or the fifth stage of the machine learning lifecycle, which is the model deployment. And then there are certain other roles like the product manager. So who's the product manager? The product manager is the person who owns the requirements, which means we are building a solution to satisfy certain requirements, right? Those requirements are owned by the product manager. So the product manager is closest to the problem statement, or he works closely with the subject matter experts who are close to the problem. And then he works closely with the machine learning team so that he conveys to them clearly what is required of them in terms of the requirements. So he owns the problem statements as well as, of course, the requirements, as well as of the eventually of the solution to ensure that it satisfies those requirements. The next role that I'll talk about is the business manager. And the business manager is usually a subject matter expert who may be a part of the machine learning team. He is the person who people refer to in order to resolve their queries with regards to the business or the domain concerned. So the first role that I think we should all be looking at is the healthcare or the life sciences data analyst. The healthcare data analyst will work on the data to either generate a lot of insights from the data or provide the data to the data science people to develop the models. I personally think that as a person with life sciences background, you can derive more insights from the data because you understand the domain well. So this is one role that you need to seriously think of. What is expected of you? Of course, you have the subject matter expertise. You would also need to become proficient in R and Python to work on data to generate insights. The second role would be the life sciences or healthcare data scientist. So a life sciences or healthcare data scientist would work on building models to train the models on data so that the model is then able to perform the task required. Over here, as long as you're working on a life sciences project, again, I personally think that a life sciences person with the data scientist knowledge has an edge over a data scientist who does not have the knowledge because he understands the problem more intuitively and he can, in certain cases as well, transform some of the tables in the data because he understands the domain well. And then in certain cases, even restructure the problem. And that can be the difference between success and failure. Finally, I think as a product manager, if you have knowledge of the domain of life sciences as well as of data science, then I think you can be a great product manager for machine learning products. And I don't need to explain this, right? Because since the product manager has to own the requirements, you would be able to own it because you understand the domain really well. And provided you understand the data science aspect, you can do a great job. So thank you. I think I talked about what are some of those roles that you can aspire to achieve. In future videos, I will talk about some of these roles in details and the skills that they need to acquire. So thank you. And before you check off, please subscribe to the channel. Bye.